Welcome back to Aliens Watching Reality TV. I'm Erika.
And I'm Jeanette.
And we're talking about the Golden Bachelor episode 3. Jeanette is also known to me as Mom, and she is my special co-host for this inaugural Golden Bachelor season.
And I still do think I'm your favorite conversation partner. Yes?
I feel a lot of pressure to say yes, so no.
Well, I'm up there. I'm a high-ranking
right now.
partner.
Absolutely, you're my favorite person I'm talking to.
Oh, that seems so limiting. I love talking with you, Erika.
No,
Thanks for this great
I love talking to you
conversation we're about to have. Episode 3 of the Golden Bachelor. I can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah, I thought this one was interesting and kind of different because it's less focused on Gary, more focused on the ladies, and we have some very interesting, situations to pull apart, and it definitely we're finally really getting to analyze the shit from a neurodiversity angle, which is the whole point of this podcast. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and they start off with. They let us see all of the women together. They have 12 women. They're going to end up with 9. So we get to see what happens in this episode. And they do start by saying that they all feel they have a connection with Gary. And they start to guess that maybe they're going to have some struggles with each other interpersonally. I guess maybe we're surprised that they didn't have more struggles initially. But those start to emerge in this episode.
Yeah. I took notes in the first, for the first 5 or 10 minutes. And the second thing I wrote down is Teresa bragging? So it did stand out to me.
Okay. So they announced to us that they're going to have a group date, and the invited participants are everyone. And so everyone's invited to a talent show that I saw they hosted it at the Canyon Club with an audience. Did you know the Canyon Club in Los Angeles?
No, but I was surprised at what a big audience it was for the talent show. That was not what I guess I'd only had 3 seconds to make a mental image imagining what was about to happen, but I clearly did, because when I saw that big crowd, I was like, oh my God, this is not what I thought.
Yeah. I was thinking more like a barn in the back, and come on, everybody, we're going to stand around in the kitchen.
Like we do it at camp. It's for each other. Yeah.
Right. Like a slumber party. It was going to be a lot more fun and informal, and instead it was like, no, everyone has an act they're going to put on. Whew. So yeah, they get started with the talent show and in front of this live audience.
And most people look excited except for Joan, who immediately looks fucking miserable.
Yeah, and I don't think that most people were excited. I think they edited for excitement. I bet most, except for maybe 2 of them who think of themselves as performers, those 2 were like, I've got this. And you could kind of feel a high school vibe happening where everyone finds out there's a thing that's happening in school today that nobody knew and 2 people are really good at. Maybe some gym class memories or other types of awkward memories of, they didn't prepare me for this thing that's happening today.
I mean, definitely, yeah, the ones who consider themselves performers are like, ooh, nice, my time to shine. But I felt like it was excitement from most of the ladies, because this is a very specific population of people who want to be on TV. So they are more interested in attention than, just your average sample group.
It does make me wonder at this point too, with the auditions and the interviews and how they narrowed down to the 20 some women that they started with. Did all those women who participated, did they do it primarily because they want to find a partner or they want to be on TV? And we said in the first episode, it did look to us like a lot of them want to find a partner.
Yeah.
And they're maybe they feel like, and I have to go through this TV way of doing it because I don't really know how I'm going to do it. I'm not going to do it through Tinder. I don't really want to do that. So TV, okay, that's maybe better than trying to run into somebody spontaneously at the bookstore, especially someone as valuable as they see
I think they all wanted to be
What do you
on
think?
TV, at least a little bit.
You think so?
You know,
Okay.
for
At
some,
least a little bit, or they wouldn't
and
be
for some
there.
people, it's to be on TV, and for other people, it's kind of just the experience of like making TV. You know, some people the attention part is more important, but some people just like that. Just sounds like such an interesting once in a lifetime experience. But yeah, I think
I don't
everyone.
think any of them counted on, or maybe two of them thought, maybe there will be an opportunity for me to sing and dance on TV. I don't think most of them had
Faith
that
clearly
thought.
showed up with that.
Yeah, she's like, oh
Yes,
yeah,
I get to do it again.
I started singing on the very first day. And then it did kind of turn out, all right, so we get to the talent show, and it did start with Sandra. She's going to tell a joke. What did you think of the joke?
I mean, I really wondered, like,
you texted me while you were watching it, so I thought, okay, you like Sandra's joke.
Because, so also, for people who don't know, I used to do stand-up. I did stand-up for 5 years. So I've seen a lot of stand-up. And the beginning of what she's doing, it's not, you know, traditionally what you would call stand-up. And if anything, it feels like, you know, a math problem or something. So then the turn, you know, the punchline at the end, like I laughed out loud. I thought it was fucking hilarious, and she sold it. And she sold it in part because the beginning part was so not funny, you know, like, and so
she told it like she were maybe at a business conference, and she's like, okay, everyone, we're at a business conference. So I'm telling you a joke, and it starts like this.
Yeah. And so you're just not expecting her to actually have a funny punchline and a raunchy one, which even though we should think by now, we know Sandra a little bit at this point, she is a little bit of a raunchy wild card. And I love that about her. Yeah, I thought it was really funny.
So she tells a joke, and then they do this quick montage. And can I just tell you, I know you hate it when I jump ahead, but I wrote all of their names down, and I realized, when we got to the end, I went back to see for the people who got cut from the show on this episode, what did they do in the talent show? And they were not part of the montage.
I mean, Christina, we're already flipping to the end, whatever. Christina, I was like, I don't think I recognize her. I haven't seen her do anything, but that's, you know, a really good indicator of why
they were not included.
Left. I'm sure
they were not included in the talent show montage.
Yeah, probably
just in the montage. They did the talent show, I'm sure,
because they just weren't as like fun and funny, you know. Jerry.
Yep. So whatever they did, it didn't impress the editors or the potential boyfriend. So we saw things like Susan break a board. She was doing some kind of a taekwondo.
She is a hoot.
She is. She's really fun and funny. And Faith, of course, sang a song, and we're kind of like, does she have any other
right?
talents
I'm a little sick
than
of
this
Faith.
Great voice and guitar? And I don't know. Okay, so now I'm going to get a little bit on the catty side. So, you know, they said at one point, I think it was in episode 1, but it might have been episode 2, but it wasn't this one, that they were starting to add up, who do we think had work done? And so whenever I see Faith, I do think, gosh, does she have the most filler in her cheeks that I've ever seen? Or not? They're just outrageously huge. Okay, you can be mad at me.
No, I'm not. But I think most of them have had at least a little work done, you know?
Yeah, a little bit. But when I look at Faith, I was like, okay, that was overboard. It's kind of painful to look at Faith.
That's funny. I mean, I don't know. I hadn't had that thought, but I guess I'll look at it next time. I guess it's not the part of her face I was looking at or something. But also,
So
I get Faith and
sings,
Leslie
too, I'm
confused.
kind of like,
my brain has a hard time distinguishing them. I know that they're different, but it took. I mean, the whole first like episode and a half, I couldn't tell them apart. It is really funny because I'm most of the time do not have a problem with faces. I'm usually great. And then every now and then my brain has two. They don't even have to be that similar. But like I used to not be able to tell the difference between Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson because my brain decided that they looked exactly the same. And so Yeah, the Faith
Well,
and Leslie, they look the same, and they both just seem kind of like artsy and insecure. Like, isn't that kind of both of their personality?
Except that Leslie she's an athlete. My God, you look at her and she is rocking athletics. She is the one who in this talent show does the dance, and she shows off her muscles quite a bit. She's super strong, and Faith does not come across the same level of athleticism. But she does. I'd say Leslie doesn't have those cheeks that are just a little. They kind of freak me out. Anyway, then Nancy does something with whipped cream, and they don't let us see very much other than she catches whipped cream in her mouth, which was wild. And Ellen did a sex ed talk, which looks really fun and entertaining. And April does a dance, maybe a striptease. I don't know. They didn't show very much of it.
Kathy, they were like, uh-oh, we're going to, get in trouble with the FCC. Oh, yeah, Kathy's push-up. That was pretty funny.
Yeah. And that was really funny. Oh, April did a dance with affirmations. That's what I wrote down. Dance and affirmations.
Oh, my mind was wandering then for sure. Because affirmations, Leslie
she does this dance and she shows that she baked also. And then they cut to the women and show their reaction. And they're all like, they have a frozen horror look on their face of she dances and she bakes, and what is this?
Yeah, that's cheating.
See it, the competition. Yeah, there is a competition now that's starting to come out where they're like, gosh darn it, she was more imaginative than me, and look at her muscles, and I'm angry. And I did think, oh, now I'm starting to see the Survivor reality TV show that's happening here. And they even do start to talk about that. We need to get in coalitions and we need to have teams. Starts to come right after the talent show. We could see it in their faces right at that moment with the baked good of, okay, we're going to gang up on her.
Well, and I mean, Kathy, April, Susan, and Nancy, they had formed before that because they announced it right at the beginning of the episode because I wrote in my notes and I only took notes at the very beginning. But yeah,
so the Survivor thing is starting to happen this week.
I do feel like they saw a couple people feel like, favorites, and it made them feel like they needed to analyze, which I understand, to an extent.
And then we have Joan. Joan has been dreading this talent show. And I think she is giving all of us that feeling of, oh my gosh, I'm now so glad I'm not a contestant on this show because I can feel the whole contestant part of it is happening.
Also, she kept saying that she doesn't have any talents, which in itself is like kind of a funny thing to say. Because nobody has no talents,
But also when you see that somebody chose, I'm going to catch whipped cream flying through the air in my mouth as one of their talents, or I'm going to do a push-up on the stage as my talent. It does remind you more back to the summer camp of you could show that your toes are double jointed or whatever that people do in summer camp talent shows.
I thought of what my silly talent would be. Because I could sing or something, but sometimes I feel too, we already know I'm good. I'm really good at hand farting, so I think that would probably...
You are good at that.
Amazing.
You do little hand swimming pool things where you make little fountains? You're like...
You just have to hand fart in water. Yeah, it's easy.
You're really good at that. I'm good at wiggling my ears and my nostrils. I'm good at those things. You can do one eyebrow.
Yeah. I only really have control over the right side of my body. The left side is doing its own thing. I don't.
Although one of my favorites of your talents is your Grinch face.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. There's no way I'm doing it.
Oh man! So everybody hold out for episode 4. We're gonna get Erika to do her Grinch face.
You really won't ever get me to do it. No.
I'll just have some way to shame you into the Grinch face.
They'll just have to believe us that I do a really good impression of the Grinch, and I haven't let it out for years, except for by myself every now and then. And
so,
it's
what would
locked
my
up.
Talent be? Because I did start thinking too when I was watching these.
You can juggle.
Okay, I would Oh, I'm pretty bad at it though. But
you don't have to be good. That's,
I probably would have given some kind of a lecture like the sex ed one, but I would have done something communication related. I did think, oh, that's probably what I would have done.
You would have tried to make it funny. I shouldn't say try.
Yeah, I am funny.
You would have made it funny.
I give a lecture today in front of dozens of people, and I was very funny. I got the room to laugh multiple times. So I would probably do something from today's lecture.
Nice.
So Joan, then she tells this poem, and it's beautiful and touching. And he does say, Gary does say, I do feel like she was talking just to me, which is the right way to have appealed to him. And then when they cut out to her and they interview her, she said, he just makes things not so scary. Being near Gary makes things not so scary. And I do like it, the authentic connection that they have from a distance when she talks. That's actually, for anybody who is thinking, how do I give a presentation and not get so scared? You look for someone in the audience that helps you feel not so scared. They've got a connection with you. They've got eye contact, a genuine feeling that's going through the ether back and forth between you. And then you just talk to them. Yeah. And Joan does that with Gary, and it works.
Yeah, because you don't have to try hard to connect with Gary. He's giving you 75% of it already, and you just have to supply the other 20. Like he's definitely, because also like some people are good audience members. He's definitely a good audience member.
Yeah,
he wants you to succeed and to connect and to be great, and I'm starting to think when Gary narrows this down, he's got to look for a woman who's not jealous, because a lot of the women are starting to get jealous. And the thing is, Gary, now that he's opened his heart to women, Gary, I think, sees his limited lifespan left, and he's going to open his heart to more women. Once he picks this also,
one
he's
woman,
famous
he's not going to say, yeah, he's going to have so much attention. So anybody that says, I'm going to partner with Gary for the rest of my life is going to have to say, and share him with the multitudes. Because Gary wants to connect. He's good at it. And women want to connect with him. Probably men are going to want to connect with him. And I'll bet Gary's going to want to connect with men. So I hope he is getting this about himself. He cannot fully commit to a jealous woman. He will be miserable if he does that. And
yeah,
I think everybody should take that lesson.
Yeah, and I don't see him making that mistake. I think,
although he makes a mistake later, so I'm jumping ahead. So back to where we are now. I do think Gary ends up making a mistake, but anyway, he then picks Joan. That happens pretty fast. And then they interview Leslie, and Leslie has this quote that I had to write in my notes, Erika, because it's heartbreaking. No one ever picks me, says Leslie, and I'm not just a sexy dancer.
Yeah, Leslie's insecure. Yeah, I know you're not just a sexy dancer. You're 75% insecurity. Like, I'm sad that you can get that old and still have that negative self-talk, Like, the reason people don't pick her is because she puts out an energy of I'm not worth picking.
Yeah,
it's sad. I hate to say that. I don't want to be victim blaming or something, but she doesn't have that. She brings that all that energy, the nobody picks me and I'm not special. Just leave that energy at home, and it you're I know, much easier said than done, but yeah, I don't know, she needs therapy or a good ayahuasca retreat or something.
Yeah, that's a good recommendation. That's what we're going to ask for Leslie. We're going to manifest it in the universe that Leslie gets an ayahuasca experience. So then Joan and Gary go on the romantic dinner date. And I did feel a bit she's this is amazing. And they both say, this is one of the best nights ever. But I did feel like Teresa's day was cooler, way cooler. Did you feel like this or no?
Teresa's day, I mean, yeah, it was definitely like more of a production. But I guess, they had just blown their budget for this episode on the talent show.
How much does it cost to rent the Canyon Club anyway?
Yeah.
They should have charged ticket prices for all those audience members.
I wonder. Yeah, I don't. Maybe they do.
And Gary says, I am as excited to be with you as I've ever been with anyone. Did you believe it when he said that?
Yes, because, and maybe I'm a fool, but I am disinclined to believe Gary. I think he is an honest person. But I think he's also a person who gets caught up and swept away in his own feelings. Yeah. And that means sometimes you really mean something when you say it. But it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to feel that same way in the long run.
And we did see in the previews at the end of episode 1 that he was going to profess that he loved several of them, or at least more than one woman on this show. And I do think he is getting really emotionally involved at a deeper level. And we're starting to see that. When he feels this feeling connection, he really trusts it and believes in it. And it does make him think, I think this is the biggest thing. He's clearly having so many big things happen inside of him that I think he's going to get pretty confused over the next few episodes.
I think every time he has one of those big lightning strike connections, when someone really opens up to him and he feels like they connect on a soul level, he falls in love with her a little bit right then. And there's nothing wrong with being that kind of person. And, I did say it last week too, but I've seen people be that way on Molly at raves. But because that is what happens. Like, you will meet people and you will have a connection with them and you will feel like, I literally love you. I just met you, but I literally love you. And I have friends that I met in rave bathrooms because it's not, it can be real, just because you can fall in love quickly and with a lot of people, it doesn't necessarily mean it's not real. And
I've talked to you about this, the importance of traveling abroad and studying abroad. I think especially when you're a young person and you can become super close friends with someone that you met in the hostel today.
Oh, yeah.
You spend 24 hours with them and you feel like, this is the best friend I've ever made. And they're from this foreign country. We're all in a foreign country and I'm from a foreign country. They're from a different country. And I feel closer to them than most of my family members, than many of the people I grew up with. And I just met them within the last 24 hours. Sometimes you even have a different language as your first language. Knowing that you can get that close to someone, I think it's an important experience that Gary's going through this. I like that you say this can happen to you at raves. And I'd suggest this can also happen at summer camp. It can happen to you when you're traveling abroad. The most important lesson here is you've got to get out of your comfort zone and out of your routine and out of I do everything the same way all the time. And then you open up your heart to people, to yourself in new ways. That's a really important lesson from this show.
I do think also, a big part of it is getting married young and then being married, you're in a whole adult life. If you are in a monogamous marriage, then you can't let yourself fall in love with people all the time. And so I'm sure he has, turned off or held back this side of his personality while he was married because that's just what you do. And I understand that. It's been a long time since I've been in a romantic relationship, but I remember I would have to make some adjustments to how, just because I know I can come off flirty even if I don't feel like I'm being flirty. And also I can get swept up in a moment and I don't ever want to make a decision I don't agree with. And so yeah, I would just sometimes like not let myself get as close with people. Which, yeah, there's pros and cons to that. But obviously at this point in my life, I say, hey, you just don't have to be monogamous. Monogamy is way overrated. You can have a wonderful marriage and connect with people and open your heart.
So they finished that date and they're both all really buzzy from it, Joan and Gary. And then they seem to cut pretty quickly to the next morning. Joan is upset. She is on the phone with her daughter, and they had talked the night before about how her daughter had a difficult birth of her child. And now Joan's talking to her and she realizes, I shouldn't be away. Something's not right. And it was, they don't give us details, which is good. I'm glad they didn't. And, but Joan cries and she goes in to talk to all the women, and they're like, oh my gosh, we haven't seen her yet. And when she comes in, they do pick up on, oh, something's wrong. And Joan says, I have to leave. I have to go be a mom.
Yeah.
And go back and be with my daughter, which I would have done for you too. Absolutely.
It's definitely the right choice. Your daughter's having a baby, especially if there's any complications. Yeah, you drop everything. And it's sad, but like, absolutely she made the right choice.
She does. And everyone says this as well. And then she steps outside and she has the one-on-one with Gary. And
I teared up.
When
they did, I did, which is a little annoying because I was trying to put some makeup on. But yeah, I don't know. It was so raw and real, both of them, their feelings, and that like the sadness, but acceptance of it. Because I love when he said we share a certain moral compass, and and it made me also think. I had a moment, I don't know, a similar kind of moment this year where, I mean, you know about it, but we had 3 dogs, but one of our dogs could not be happy and safe in our house. And we spent 2 years trying to make our house right for him, and we couldn't. And so I eventually I found the perfect person to adopt him, and I had to drive him across the country to California, and it was a completely insane thing to do, and it was so heartbreaking, and I just was sobbing my eyes out because, like, that's my baby. I'm giving away my baby. I never in a million years would see myself rehoming one of my dogs, but I knew it was the right thing for him, and I also knew, like, if Frida and I weren't the kind of people who would do this, who would go to these lengths for this dog, and who would put his well-being above ours, then like I wouldn't like who we are. Like, we have to be these people, but God, sometimes it sucks to like be the kind of person who really cares about maintaining your moral standards, even when it really, really fucking hurts.
Yeah, and they do connect over this, just the vicissitudes of life, that you have the highest moment of your life one night and then you have this super low moment the next day, and they have a good hug and goodbye, and they do know she's off the show. We don't know for sure that they'll never see each other again, or they might reconnect and say, we had such a good time. And again, back to Gary's probably going to end up with many women, a woman in every city, and possibly that Joan's going to be one of them. But I love that Joan also says that she felt her heart was a little fixed, she said, and she felt less invisible, which I thought was really good for her.
It's not like, she's going to be ready to meet somebody.
And she's an incredibly beautiful person.
Yeah, she's really pretty.
And to know that she is really pretty, and she does feel, she had felt invisible. This opportunity to be on this show and this experience, it pulled her out of a comfort zone and, maybe out from under a blanket of some kind. And she does see herself more in the world, making decisions for herself while still following her moral compass, her heart, to do what's right for her family and her community. So I thought that was really nice. One of the questions I had about just The Bachelor is, do people ever voluntarily leave the show?
Yes.
For any reason? Is this one of the few times? What are other reasons? Do you know?
I mean, it's not common, but
is it often from a family emergency standpoint?
Sometimes, but sometimes it's just like, I'm fucking miserable here. This is too stressful for me, especially if there's like conflict with some of the other girls. And they're just like, I remember there was a girl in Demi's season who left voluntarily, and partly it was because they were traveling, and it was just like, it was all too much. She was in too many new environments and like didn't feel prepared and safe, and then and I don't remember all the details really, but I'm sure it was also like one of the girls in the house fucking hated her, and so she just like she couldn't do it, and she was really sad about it, but yeah, so it does happen, not that often, because obviously it takes a fair amount of effort to get on The Bachelor, so once you get on, you probably want to stay. But I do think also
that
sometimes
was one of the questions I was curious
the experience
about.
is so fucking miserable for people that they leave for that reason.
So then we switch to Gary is back this morning because he's going to invite someone to go on an extended date with him. And then, they turn it all back to, okay, show's back on. Let's invite one person, and he picks Ellen.
Yeah.
Did you like that?
I wasn't excited about the choice right at first because I didn't have a particular like, ooh, Ellen, I love her. But then I loved watching their date. I could see, I guess maybe just we hadn't seen enough of her or something. I have enjoyed that her title card always says like pickleball co-captain, because
yeah,
like you brought up in the first episode that everyone is saying their professions, even their retired professions, and obviously she hasn't spent her life as a pickleball co-captain, and so I like that that's how she is identifying at this time. I was once really captain of my dodgeball team for a couple of years, and I'm horrible at dodgeball and hate sports, so I thought it was hilarious, and I loved telling people I was the captain of a dodgeball team. So, yeah, what did you think?
Maybe you need to update your LinkedIn profile with something that you really feel good is fun. Are you on LinkedIn? I don't even know if you are.
No.
Oh, well, dodgeball. There you go. You have that.
I quit 5 years ago because my team ended up wanting to try to be better, and they didn't they didn't like it that I wasn't sad when we lost.
Yeah, I do remember when that happened, and you're like, how does anyone care about this?
Oh, I'm not willing to be sad when we lose. I will just quit.
So they bring a designer in, and then Ellen finds out she's been selected for this date, and she gets to go to Dress Paradise, and she has a ball with it. I think it is her favorite part of the date, actually.
She
was
gets invited to Dress Paradise. Excited.
She really was. And she's like, bam, this is me, and this is me, and look at me in another dress. I just had the best time with watching Ellen loving trying on long dresses and just like, the best day of my life. That was fun.
It did also sort of make me realize a privilege that I've experienced that maybe I haven't appreciated enough, is that like I've had lots of experiences to feel beautiful, to feel doted on, and clearly a lot of people like they haven't had any really. And so of course I would have enjoyed going dress shopping and all that, and like that's not an everyday thing. It would be special for me, but not like it was for her, where it was like, I've never gotten to do this. I've never gotten to feel this way. And so I was really glad for her that she got to have that experience. And it just, it made me reflect a little bit on like, that's something that I sometimes have taken for granted as being part of normal life. And I shouldn't take that for granted.
And it's not part of my normal life. So you remember this happened to me just a few years ago that a good friend of mine who is super artistic and fun and creative, she lives in another city, and I went to visit her, and she thinking ahead, surprised me with a bunch of dresses that she bought at a thrift shop that would fit both of us because we're pretty close to the same size. And then she said, we're going to do photo shoots in the woods and fields and wherever you think is beautiful, and just put something on that's like a tank top and shorts, and we're just going to keep changing out our dresses.
They were
and take pictures of each other.
Fantastic photos.
It's so fun. I never did anything like that in my whole life. And now I have all these pictures of me in glamorous dresses out in dramatic backdrops that are near her house.
I remember I tweeted like a couple of them, saying like my mom did her first like fancy photo shoot ever, and it got like fucking 500 likes or something. Like,
oh wow, yeah, that's good to know.
It was adorable even to people who don't know you. Yeah.
That was really funny. So I could appreciate when Ellen was invited into this dress paradise, and she just had a blast with it. And I thought, good for her. So yeah, we both could recognize that was an unusual experience for her. And they interviewed Gary, and he is wondering, he's like, I feel like I'm the most myself around her, where I'm not trying to put on something and trying to be something.
Which I thought was very interesting. I didn't know he felt that way about her, but then you could totally see it.
Because they hadn't edited it so that we had seen this interaction between them. We saw more with him and Natasha, honestly, from last episode, that he had this really easygoing rapport with Natasha. But I guess he's had that with Ellen as well, and he wonders, will he have a romantic connection with her? So the whole thing was set up to try to bring romance into their relationship. And I wondered, did she asks him, she's like, oh, I have a bunch of questions. And the first question she asked him is, or the first one they reveal to us, tell me about your wedding day. And he's like,
I thought that was a weird question. Yeah.
I think she thought of it as a really safe question, but then I wondered, have you ever asked a man before about his wedding day? Because whenever I've asked a man about his wedding day, he has said it was one of the worst days I ever had. I think women maybe enjoy their wedding day. Most men, I think, don't enjoy their wedding day.
I know my dad enjoyed his wedding to Monica, my stepmom, because we still laugh.
But not ours.
Because we still laugh about like the DJ and the bartender, and the bartender who looked exactly like Mike Ditka and poured one drink for himself for every drink he poured for other people, and then was
in other words, men can find some humor in their wedding day, but
or
most of them didn't
you just
really go like,
gotta get
best day of
you
my
gotta
life.
get married 3 times and have the third one be in your backyard and just really low stakes. Like that's the secret.
So honestly, if Ellen and Gary get married, they're gonna have a kick-ass great wedding day. But he clearly didn't have one for his first one. As he admits, he was really broke.
And it was so long ago.
They were just so long ago. He can barely remember it. And a lot of life has happened to him since then. And it was probably a really stressful time in his young life. And I did think it was funny that she and maybe other women have thought that your wedding day is always one of your best days. But it's not. It's not.
I think it's a horrible day for a lot of women, too. Yeah. I think it's just...
But honestly, probably most men. I would love, if anybody watches this and there's comments later, tell us, what do you think? Women and men, did they like their wedding day, and did most men hate theirs?
Why do you think that men would be more likely? What would be the reason?
I think it's clearly because women do look forward to having a wedding day a lot of times throughout their childhood, teenage years, 20s. They're thinking about their wedding day, and most men have never thought about it before. And so when men and women create a heterosexual wedding day, they're usually trying to reenact the imagination of the woman's childhood wedding day. And the guy is like, whatever, I am clearly a bit player in your imaginary wedding day.
I can see also that.
Including me in it.
Yeah, that is so foreign to me because I I have never dreamed
imagined my wedding
of something
day.
like that. Yeah.
No, neither of us ever did. And that might be the hallmark of the neurodivergent woman. We're not necessarily having a dream of our wedding day.
Also, I have just realized many times over, I clearly don't really actually understand women, and so I'm not one. Like,
I actually had this conversation yesterday in one of my classes with a team of all women in the team. And we talked about it because the topic for one of my cases in class this semester is about a wedding company, as a wedding suit company. And we talked about the imaginary wedding day. And 3 of the 6 women said they had in detail already planned their weddings since they were little kids. And 1 said imagined, but not in detail. And 2 said, haven't even thought about it. So
it makes sense. Yeah. I mean, you do or you don't. You're that kind of girl or not.
Yeah.
I have had, I won't name her, but you will know who it is. I've only tried really to be friends with one neurotypical person ever. And we also attempted to be roommates for a while. Well, we were. And we wanted to like each other, but we just like, we're so different. And I do remember her asking me once, how do you want to be proposed to? Which, like, that question barely computed in my mind. Like, that I haven't thought of a single element of that sentence ever. And her other one was, would my dad or my stepdad walk me down the aisle when I got married? And I was just like, I've never thought about any of these things. And why would I think about them? There's no wedding in sight. Like, yeah, that was my first time actually, like, I guess talking to a wedding obsessed girl. Yeah. Which, it's kind of fascinating. It's a cultural thing too, you know?
It's cultural, and it's often, there's a gender connection to it back to the culture. So I wasn't surprised that Gary couldn't remember it. And Ellen was just floored. She couldn't imagine that wasn't a perfect question to ask someone. And he's like, yeah, no, don't remember it. He gives her earrings and she is over the moon. So like dresses, earrings, wedding. She's clearly a romantic woman. Mm-hmm. And then there's the hot air balloon and the rose. And then they kiss too. And she's like, yeah, I want to make out with this guy so much now. She had such a romantic experience with him. And that was really fun to watch.
I think my take on her is that it's not only that she's romantic. I think she also like just enjoys living in fantasy, enjoys imagination. You know, like she probably would enjoy a very adventurous feeling day. And, you know, like I think she just, and you know, I can be like that as well. So, she just like, she gets into the spirit of whatever she's doing and really goes with the flow.
And Gary seems kind of like a person who does that. So I could see if they end up together, I think they'd be a great couple.
I really could see it
feel
today.
A lot of romance between them. Did you feel? I didn't feel a lot of romance between them, but I do think that barrier is back to these are adults who haven't made out with very many people, and they're put in front of cameras, and it's just easier for all of the other Bachelor contestants, if that's what we call them, that they've made out with more people recently. And they have thought more about being in front of a television than the people who are on this show. So I do think they have as much of a romantic connection as anybody, and they have a good chance that they will end up together.
Yeah. Because it didn't feel like, you know, sometimes you can tell that there's a strictly platonic energy between people, and it wasn't like that. No. I can see if they were truly open-minded enough and, you know, had a similar, I guess, mindset to me, I could see them having a great relationship that also maybe wasn't strictly monogamous, or wasn't like completely a traditional relationship. You know, like I don't know that they, fit those completely standard like boyfriend girlfriend roles necessarily, but they also are people who, like, if they could really let themselves go, they don't need to.
Okay, so then we get into the drama. This is kind of how the episode winds up. Maybe other Bachelor's seasons, the drama happened sooner, but it has finally kicked in on this one. They're down to 12 women. They're going to kick a few of them out pretty soon. And so some of them are starting to actually play the game. And some of them, I think, aren't picking up on it's a game. So I wonder how much the women individually were ready for the way that the show would likely turn if you put multiple people into one place and they're all auditioning or interviewing for the one job. We're kind of narrowing down to only one person's going to win this thing. That means it's going to start getting kind of competitive and mean.
I think also this is just a great representation of what happens when you have a group of women of different neurotypes, because groups made of different neurotypes do not communicate well, don't get along well. That's just true. Like, I've experienced like this conflict from so many different angles, and there are so many ways to see it. And so, yeah, I found this very fascinating, and like perfectly why we have this podcast. I would love to hear your take on it.
Okay. And then I would like to hear yours if it's similar or different. So we were watching they show a scene in the kitchen, and you can see they've got, I was looking for where the hidden cameras are. I'm like, oh, in that cookie jar. And I don't know if you were doing that too.
No.
Because they keep showing all these different angles. And I think, oh, I can tell there's one in that, it's not like the nanny teddy bear or anything, but it has kind we have one in the drawer that's looking out. So they are trying to show this conversation that's happening between Kathy and Teresa. And Teresa is revealing to Kathy, I have feelings for him and I felt so close to him. And now I haven't seen and talked to Gary for a while. And I honestly, when I was watching it, you can see Kathy's kind of like, oh, Kathy is listening intently. And if I were Teresa in this moment, I'd think, gosh, I found a friend. She's really listening to me.
That is how she sees it.
And I need to tell someone these feelings because I don't have any friends or family here. I'm totally alone. I have some feelings to process. And this woman has locked eyes with me. I've seen her also really talk to other women and listen to Susan. She's such a good listener. Kathy's really listening to me. I feel like I need to unburden some of this because I don't want to unburden it to everyone, but Kathy is talking to me in the corner of this kitchen, really listening to me. Thankfully, I can finally say some of these feelings that I have. And that's not what's happening. Teresa is really misunderstanding Kathy's intention and relationship with her. And of course, I think there were a lot of us neurodivergent types who went back to middle school, high school, summer camp, first job, whatever it was. And we can say, I thought I had a friend in this woman, and then she totally betrayed me. And I never saw it coming because it never occurred to me that this woman who was listening really well wasn't trying to be my friend, but instead was turning a whole thing into a way to weaponize the context against me. And I felt badly for Teresa, especially when Kathy, when she does turn it and she like, can you believe that Teresa was talking to me in the kitchen? And she also says, and her clothes are impossibly small. And then, turns it into, how dare this woman be petite and conniving? And I was like, oh my God, Teresa is not reading this at all. She is not understanding the mean girl thing that's happening around her. And she is befriending the exact wrong person who's going to come back and get her. And then that's what happened. And then I do feel like I'm so glad I've grown up finally, and I can start to see some of the dynamics of how women treat each other. I tend to, if I open up to someone, it's someone I've known for a while. It is someone who is often a man who is not involved in
There's
my
a reason
life in
I
some
do
way.
not have groups of female friends. It doesn't work.
And, during the pandemic, I think I shared this with you, and maybe some of my colleagues will watch this later. I found out later at the end of the pandemic-ish, because it's not totally over, that there were women that I thought were in my close friend group that kept meeting throughout the pandemic, and they didn't include me. And it's because I am such a rule follower. I did think, oh, well, there's a pandemic and there's rules and we're not supposed to. So when I could see it later, they were testing me out individually. Would I tell on them?
Also, just would you make them feel bad? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And would I have everybody mask up and we have to meet outside? Because that's all I was doing, because that's what I thought everyone was doing. And then, no, they were still meeting. They just didn't include me. And then they had kind of a no social media rule on their get-togethers. But it came up later, a good year later. Oh, when we met in the garage and then we were at her house, and I was like, oh yeah, I wasn't part of that.
I had similar things happen. I think I was, I don't mean this as a dig, but like slightly less naive about it, because I had started to figure out these things, but I had friends who were hanging out without me and hanging out and, just doing things they weren't supposed to do, really. And I could see, like, just they feel judged by my very existence, even if I'm not judging them. And most, especially neurotypical people, but most people avoid feeling bad. That's like one of their main drives, is just avoid feeling bad. Avoid feeling bad about yourself. Avoid any negative, uncomfortable feeling. And so, if you cause that feeling, even if you're not doing anything, they're going to avoid you. And
because then some of the language that Kathy says, it's just horrifying. And she says it to Teresa to try to make her feel bad. And maybe I'm skipping ahead.
No,
too far.
let's
okay.
Just try and dissect the whole thing. Do you want to hear my take on it? Yes. I mean, I know you wanted to, but do you want to hear it now?
Sure. Yeah. No, I've got notes.
So I found this really fascinating, and exactly why these shows are interesting. Because I have finally learned enough about the neurotypical perspective and how they communicate and how they think that I could see Kathy's perspective, which I never could before.
Me too.
And I have started to basically have a little more respect for why, or it's it's not as hurtful anymore that people so frequently interpret autistic people as having malicious intent, because I can see now that we frequently are indistinguishable from people with malicious intent. And
and she even says either she's really stupid or she's really malicious.
Yeah. And because I was really thinking about it too, because I didn't want to just go with my emotional tendency to see myself in her and give her the benefit of the doubt, because I have learned that's not smart. Don't do that all the time. Most people aren't autistic. So, I have to consider, what if Kathy's right, because unfortunately I've learned that perspective is true way more often than I could have ever imagined. And sometimes Teresa is saying things where it's like, I was having a hard time seeing this as unintentional, especially when she was really going in on all the nice things that he had said to her, and we connected on traveling, and we just decided, let's do it. Let's go to Italy, and, to really go on and on about things that they weren't about her feelings. They were about, and I understand it was sharing joy from a great date, but it's hard to imagine that you can get to like 65 years old and not have any concept of your words affecting the person you're talking to.
Yeah, that she's talking to another contestant.
Yeah. And Kathy
it would make her feel bad.
Her vibe is changing. She is like, because she's not just being a snake. She is showing discomfort, and she wants her to stop. Because I agree that like Kathy's perspective is horrifying and I think incorrect. And sadly that works a lot, because just accusing somebody else of being the mean girl first frequently means that's the story that will stick. It's like, you got to do it first. But it's usually the mean girl who first accuses someone else of being the mean girl. But she really does think that Teresa is being manipulative and mean. That's not a story that she's just creating in her mind. She really thinks so. And she really thinks so because people do that. They actually do that. And
she's the kind of person who would do it. So she does have that. She makes the same kind of mistake that all of us make in thinking that other people are like we are. And so if I said something, this is Kathy saying this, if I said something like that to another person, I would be doing it because I'm trying to win and I'm trying to make her doubt herself so she'll lose. So Kathy can't imagine that maybe Teresa is just unloading. But as you say, if you're unloading, you shouldn't unload on someone that you know you're actually going to harm through that unloading. And so, like if you went up to a person on the street that you could see is struggling financially and said, I just lost so much money on the stock market and my portfolio is down.
What it 5%. Really was is I just got so much money on the stock market. You would not believe how well this one stock did. And I really didn't even put in any research into it. I just kind of went on a whim and my returns have doubled. Right. That's what she's doing, because it's mostly she's sharing excitement.
But she was also saying, I feel badly that I haven't been able to connect with him since then. And other people are connecting with him. But
that's not
me,
the part that's
really
bothering
worried now.
Yeah.
So there is a cluelessness to it, or there is a real conniving to it. And
just because, and this is also true of, I can be manipulated. We all can. So I am inclined to say, because of, seeing Teresa's emotional reactions in the interviews and stuff, I am inclined to believe that this was unintentional and she is just probably way more neurodivergent than anyone has figured out, like in her life. So she has not learned how to account for that at all. And she's not being intentionally manipulative and intentionally playing a game. In fact, she's unaware that this game is happening. So that is what I'm inclined to believe. But I do also I know now, intellectually and logically, that there are people who are so convincing at playing exactly that and at crying and getting you to feel bad for them. And I would be a fool to pretend that I can tell the difference. That's just like, humans are not good at telling when other people are lying. We have no fucking skill for it. So she could be a master manipulator. I think she's probably not. But it was fascinating to see that, like, Kathy is creating the situation, but I can see why she thinks she's responding to a situation that has already been created, and why that's not just a crazy bitch thing to do. Like, I can see her reasoning behind it, and that there like potential realities in which she would be correct.
And Erika, I think that's such a beautiful conclusion that you've come to, because it also shows so much growth that's happened in you. You understand the world better now. You're less susceptible to straight out harms from people who are trying to manipulate or are unaware in their manipulation. And I'm really glad for you. You know, I hope other people who watch the show and maybe hear your take on it and the other shows that you review, such as Love is Blind, I hope that they get some more of that learning from being near your experience, that you can see that we don't know what someone's really going through and we don't know exactly what their intention is. We are always trying to figure it out and to interpret it, but much of our interpretation will absolutely be wrong. Even sometimes when we try to interpret our own behaviors and our own intentions, we might still be wrong.
And unfortunately, if you try to interpret other people based off of what makes sense to you, what it would mean if you were doing it, as an autistic person in a world that is not majority autistic, you will be wrong almost all the time. Like,
and this was the point I wanted to make about Gary. So he has this one-on-one conversation with Kathy, and she does bring him the drama and the tears. And it did seem so kind of scripted, calculated. But I also thought, I don't know. She doesn't seem like a real crier, and she is crying. So is she making herself cry, or is she reluctantly actually breaking down in front of him? All I know is Gary interprets it as there is drama happening, and this poor woman is a victim of it. He just really, buys into she's a victim of it. And I thought, oh man, Gary is just like the rest of us, interpreting the world through his own experience. And when he's thinking, when I cry, it is 100% authentic. And he cries often and easily, and it is authentic. So of course, if Kathy, who is a strong woman, would cry in front of me, it must be because there's a real trauma that's happened to her, is happening to her, and he feels so badly for her, he gives her a rose. And I thought, oh man, makes me a little worried for Gary's future, that he's so easily ready to rescue with the rose is a rescue. And I was a little worried for him.
And autistic people in general were very susceptible to like exactly this kind of thing, this sort of emotional manipulation that preys on our empathy. And because we do not expect that people, there's like people we know in our normal lives are going to actually be implementing these like super complicated and extreme like manipulation plans like that just feel unreal, but it is real because Kathy absolutely is manipulating him on purpose. And
you had this happen in middle school, and I remember it really well. And you do too. As soon as I say it, I'm sorry. It's probably going to make you. It's going to make you
probably
emotional.
not, because I've had this happen to me a million times throughout my life.
This one, it was one of the first times that you saw it and reflected on it and talked to me about it in detail, that you had a friend who died. And then when you were back at school, there were girls who expressed intense sadness about it that you knew didn't know him. And they were trying to get attention because a young guy had died. And so they wanted to now show their group that they were wounded and needed comforting. And you were horrified by it because you knew these girls didn't even know him. They just want attention because this is the moment they could get some if they show how torn up they are at the loss of this friend of yours.
Yeah. And that is the kind of thing that, like, I have had to discover that those people and those situations are real, because I wouldn't believe that without having the proof right in front of me, which also means when people interpreted me that way, basically anytime someone has interpreted me as a neurotypical, it made no sense to me, and it was baffling. And honestly, it never really affected like my sense of self. Because it just so ludicrous. I just thought other people are paranoid and like unrealistic. But now I could see that like they were interpreting me that way because most of the time, if somebody was doing exactly that same thing I was doing or whatever, they it would have a completely different meaning, you know?
And it's too bad that have all seen it multiple times, that someone is turning on a level of emotion to try to manipulate the emotions of others around them. And then it does feel like that's what Kathy's doing in this moment with Gary, and he completely buys it. But I wonder if he completely bought it.
Well, he didn't.
Or if he just thought, whenever a woman cries,
he didn't completely buy it, or he wouldn't have given Teresa a rose. That's what I was actually really worried about, is he going to be played so completely? Because that is something very frustrating that I've experienced, where where people have just completely believed someone who was just lying and manipulating, and to watch them completely fall for it was so frustrating. And I was worried about that, and so I'm glad that he didn't buy it that completely. But
because we have seen that happen too. And I actually had a good, a clear is what I mean, childhood memory about that, of that happening also in my family, using tears to manipulate a parent. And I've seen other kids do that, where they manipulate a parent through tears to get one kid in trouble.
Unimaginable.
Or, have the kid be the bad.
It's like, I know it's real, but I can't. I couldn't do it, and I can't imagine doing it. Like,
it's another reason why you were such a joy to raise as a child. You were so authentic all the time, and I appreciate you just being yourself all the time.
Also, my least favorite feeling in the world is people feeling bad for me or feeling like pity for me. So I cannot imagine trying to get that feeling on purpose. But yeah, I think I know, like, and you got to go soon. So this is sort of my concluding thought on this.
Well, I'm not concluding yet because I still have notes.
Okay. Well, so this is sort of where I land on it is, it's impossible to make yourself impervious to emotional manipulation. And if you were, that would mean such skepticism and distrust of everyone in your life all the time. And just on the balance, that's not worth it. I think it's better to sometimes be manipulated and also be a good friend and be there for other people. You know, it's better to just like believe people when they say they feel a certain way, believe them. And sometimes they'll be lying to you, but most of the time, hopefully, if you have not surrounded yourself with horrible people, it will be real. Because also, refusing to believe somebody when they are sharing their genuine feeling is so awful. It's so painful. I would rather fall for manipulation sometimes. You just have to have really strong boundaries of like what that means. Like, just because I might believe somebody, that doesn't mean I'm going to lend them my car or give them money, or, you know? And also a rule that I have basically for myself is, no matter how convincing someone's story is, I'm not going to take their word for it and create a negative perception of someone else. That is, I have learned that there will be two sides to a story that both sound completely believable and both make sense, and I'm not going to just believe the first one I hear. I think that causes so much damage, because then you usually end up believing the person who wants to manipulate you, because they're the one who's going to actively seek you out to tell you that story. And I also have had people just lie about me in such insane ways that it just made me realize, like, I'm never going to just take people's word for it. Like when they tell me about, gossip about other people, because I know that most people are willing to just hear a story, have no evidence for it, have no corroboration even, and just believe it. And I think that's foolish and frequently ends up really hurting people. So that, I think the way he handled it is the right way. He believed Kathy in that moment. He supported her, but he didn't punish Teresa for it.
Again, he's a winner. They picked the right guy. He's great. Have a hard time doing a season 2. Yeah. He's setting such a high bar for humans, but certainly for guys who might go on this show in the future. I did think that with the Kathy Teresa drama, it's good for anyone who wants to go back to rewatch those the final interactions between the two women, the language that each of them is choosing with the producers as they talk to the producers, but also as they try talking to each other. The language reveals their level of manipulation, and maybe it could be strategies of manipulation. Is Teresa trying to manipulate Kathy? It doesn't feel like to me, and primarily because of the language that she chooses, where she says, I want to try to repair this relationship, and then Kathy says things like, you've made me feel.
Oh, that bothered me a lot.
You made me feel. I was like, oh,
because
and she says, don't cry. Those two things, I thought, okay, that's just straight up gaslighting language. And I don't know how people feel about that.
But I can also see she thinks she is setting up a boundary to not be manipulated, because she thinks that what Teresa is doing in this moment is basically that Teresa is trying to gaslight her and then start crying on purpose to emotionally manipulate her. So she's like, don't do it.
I think Kathy just thinks, I have the upper hand. You were the contestant that looked like you might win, and I'm trying to get you off the show. It feels to me completely like this is game playing. We did this in high school, and that's the thing.
She is game playing, but she thinks Teresa is game playing too. She really does.
Yeah. I think she does think Teresa
because
is
also
game
people
too.
who really are game playing like that all the time, they can't imagine that there are people who don't do that. Like, they don't really believe that. They think that's basically always a lie. If you say that you don't play those games, that's you playing a game right now.
That's part of the game, right? So anyway, then they get to the rose ceremony. They're two women that they didn't include in the talent shows, so they were kind of already previewing that they were going to kick them off. And one woman left of her own will. So we've got 9 women left. They did some previews looking to next week. Pickleball, 4-wheelers, hot tub. I didn't see as many tiers, but it looks like it's going to be an exciting episode. I think we'll have I didn't ever talk about my own dating history yet, my recent one. So maybe we'll get to that. And as we review episode 4, I look forward to it, Erika.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I was just going to say too, I agree with you about like the language they are using and totally turned off by Kathy's language and totally understand and empathize with Teresa's language. But then right at the end of the rose ceremony, Teresa says like she wants to try and rebuild this with Kathy, and then she starts doing the same thing. Yeah. He came to my room and he said the nicest thing to me. He just said the sweet, and
he came to your room?
But then she keeps going with, he said the sweetest thing to me. And I'm just like, yeah, I can see why people are suspicious of you, because it is hard to believe that you don't realize what you're doing because you started doing it immediately.
If they just set a boundary and you crossed the boundary.
Immediately. Yeah. I'm like, you know?
Very good points, Erika. Okay, we're going to talk again next week.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, won't talk to you again until then. Just kidding.
No, probably talk tomorrow.
Yeah.
I love you.
You too, Mom. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Aliens Watching Reality TV is hosted by Erika Heidewald and Josh Shahryar. It's produced and edited by Erika Heidewald, that's me. And our theme song is Just World by Erika Heidewald, which is also me. Available for streaming on iTunes and Spotify. For $5 a month, you can subscribe to our Patreon and get an extra full-length episode of the podcast every week. Right now, we're covering Love is Blind Season 1. We'd love to hear from you. Our social media links are in the episode notes, or you can write to us at alienswatchingrealitytv@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, and as always, until death do us part. Amen. Welcome to the world. Let me tell you what I've learned about